Okay, so hello to everyone. As mentioned already, my name is Raido. I am a software engineering manager at NIS, and I'm hoping you're all having a great community event. And of course, since this is an X-Road community event, it's a good opportunity to also go over what we have done in the past year with the community, what has evolved there, and also what are the latest developments, as well as what some of the future developments are. And we can begin from the past year. So if we have a look at what we have done so far since the last community event, where we also spoke about some of these things, in no particular order. The first thing is improving the public visibility of our project. So also last year we mentioned this, that now we have public backlogs available for our GitHub projects in regards to X-Road Core as well as X-Road metrics. And then, of course, any new developments that we might have, such as the X-Road catalog service that is now in the repository, and something that we will also be introducing a public backlog to. The second thing here, of course, to mention is we're very happy to get contributions to our projects, and one of the happiest news on the side of contributions for this year is for X-Road metrics. We have received quite a few large contributions there regarding code performance and also some other tweaks. Then for the X-Road Core project itself, we have had updates suggested to the documentation. We've also had updates suggested to the actual infrastructure code. So for instance, Ansible scripts, and also in relation to the Docker containers there. And recently we also received a contribution to the X-Road sidecar project. So we're very happy to see that the community is getting more and more involved. We're getting contributions, be they large or small. We are very happy to receive them all. And related to that, I would also like to thank you for joining us in discussions on GitHub. So we have had quite a few GitHub issues this year that have asked questions from us. And the good part there is that whenever you ask a question on GitHub issues, it means that also other people can search for it. They can have a look at closed issues. They can have a look at open issues. And if they run across a similar problem, that means that it might already actually be solved in one manner or another. There might be a workaround if it's an actual bug in the version, or it might also be that it's something that needs additional configuration, or it's a bit of a custom case. So we're very happy to see that the community has been getting more and more involved in that aspect of GitHub as well. And finally, from the past year, one of the highlights is we have quite an active community on Slack. We have received a lot of questions, be it regarding setups, so setting up their own environment, asking about experiences from other users, also questions regarding X-Road metrics and how to use the open data or then the networking portion of it. And we are very happy to receive those types of questions. We're happy to interact with the community. And what's even greater is that also the community members themselves have gotten involved, and they have actually also pitched in on their experiences with the questions, how they have solved it in the past, and so forth. And it's been anything from configuring advanced logging, so how they could better parse the X-Road logs themselves to get some additional information in third-party systems, or then how they can improve their auditing processes. So that's some of the past year, but now we can also take a look at some more recent changes that we have introduced to our projects. And the first one that I'd like to mention here is the change to our Jira backlog. And this mostly affects the X-Road Core, because there it was becoming quite a big problem for us that we had a lot of issues in the backlog. And they weren't all relevant issues for this year or this version or even the future few 2 years. So it was quite hard for community members to find what we are actually working on in the recent future. It was also somewhat difficult for our developers to grasp what the focus is for the next version, or then what the focus is for this year, for instance. And to combat this, we have made the change that now the X-Road backlog is actually split up into active items. So those are the items that we will be working on this year. And under this year, we usually have the items that are related to the current version we're working towards, and then the next version that is to be released this year. So towards the end of the year, of course, that current backlog will get smaller. But on the other hand, we also have roadmaps for 2024 and 2025 that contain major issues that have already been agreed upon. That would be the next big steps for the following years. And then the plan is to do this filtering amongst ourselves for the following years. So at the end of 2023, we will, of course, start looking at the backlog that is for 2024, and we will start to split them up into versions, so which version you could expect them in, and also defining the scopes of those versions. So towards the end of the year, also the next year's roadmap will start becoming clearer and clearer for the community and also for our developers and us in general. So I think that has been a major change. And of course, we still have what we call the non-prioritized backlog, which are all of the items that are still there that we don't have an exact plan for when they will actually be introduced, so which year's roadmap. And the idea there is that some of those items can be brought into the current roadmap, so the current version's roadmap, if we see that we have some flexibility in the timeline and we're able to introduce additional tickets to the version. The next big thing, in my view, is that we introduced GitHub workflows recently through GitHub Actions. And previously, one of the hard parts about contributions was actually that we have our internal pipelines, of course, that run the tests in Jenkins. We also have always had SonarQube that analyzes the code statically, brings out issues that are existing there and something that we can monitor. But the issue there was that in the public GitHub pull request, the only thing that you essentially saw there was whether the pipeline succeeded or whether it failed. But that doesn't really give you an opportunity to fix anything in your pull request if it was a unit test that failed or if it was a integration test or system test that failed. You didn't have any insight into it. So to combat this, we introduced workflows that now actually build the X-Road system, builds the Debian packages, it runs the system tests, it runs the unit tests, it runs the integration tests, and all of that is also publicly available in the action that's related to the pull request, and the actual contributor can see what exactly failed and what succeeded, no matter if they're able to access our internal systems or not. So I think that will be a big boon to anyone that wants to contribute to the project, and that applies for the X-Road Core as well as X-Road Metrics, even for MISP2 and even for the new catalog service. We have already introduced this new action, and moving forward, the intent is to try to utilize that a bit more. And as said, it also provides these public test results that are gathered from the actions themselves, so users are able to view a nice summary. Unfortunately, currently, the core unit tests and the integration tests are so large that the GitHub action summary actually doesn't allow showing the report, so it contains too much information, and it's something that we're looking to resolve in one manner or another. but at least for the system test, you have a nice result. And if a unit test does fail, then it usually means that the resulting file will be left small enough that you can still see the results there. But it's definitely something that we are looking to improve upon. Now also, I mentioned SonarQube already, that we use it internally. But in addition to that, we also now use Sonar Cloud for currently metrics and also the X-Road Core. We are planning to introduce it to other projects as well, but it will take some time. So that means that we also have this nice overview in our pull request now that shows if there's any quality gates that failed or if everything's green, and also you can check out the in-depth details on the Sonar Cloud page itself. Then one large change is also to the service desk. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we were very happy to see that we have quite a few interactions over GitHub issues. And that led us to the train of thought that maybe we should utilize this a bit more. So in the past, we have had this Jira-based service desk where anyone can post their question. But then the issue with that is that while we at NIS can see it and the original reporter can see it, the rest of the community really does not have access to that resource. And what we really felt was that it is a resource and it can be viewed as sort of a naturally growing knowledge base. So if we have all of those service desk requests coming through our GitHub issues for any questions that they have, or even reporting bugs, for instance, then that means that the rest of the community can also take advantage of that, and they can actually see if some question has been asked already. In addition to that, if there is a known issue with a version of X-Road, then that becomes searchable on GitHub issues. So it provides this additional source of knowledge for the community to search and look up. And additionally, we have decided to move the change request there for the community. And those will be, rather than in issues, those will be in discussions. And the hope there as well is that when there is a change request proposed, the community can pitch in, they can add their ideas, they can use the emoticons to upvote changes that they would like to see. And we can use that as sort of a basis to understand what are the bigger hopes for the change. Maybe there's some slight differences in how people see that the change should be introduced, and that means that it's good to have a discussion, and it's great to have it in public. And of course, NIS members will still have this direct Jira service desk for us as well. It makes our lives easier in the sense that we can also understand if it's coming from the wider community or if it's coming directly from our members. So it also helps us to discover that. And finally, from the recent changes, we introduced a change to the bug bounty program. So before we were using a service for this, but we have moved it so that it is now in our Confluence, so it's still publicly available. It has the guidelines, it has the rewards stated for it and so forth. But now we host it, and the reason for that mainly is that unfortunately, while the platform that we used was great, we really did like it, we did not get enough reports through there for us to see that it would be worth it to keep it going. So those are some of the recent changes that we've had. And just quickly to show you the new workflows, in picture format at least, you can see the results page on the top left there. You can see the Sonar report. Of course, I picked out the good ones where everything's green. That's not always the case. And then under the run test, you can also see the actual testing pipeline, which you see is actually taking quite a long time, and we'll touch on it a bit. And then on the right side, on the bottom there, there's just an example of a bit of the YAML file that it takes to set it up. And now, looking at the future, We have a plan to have even more public workflows. For ESG, monitoring X-Road's power efficiency and trying to understand its environmental impact. We want to test out different frameworks that are available there and utilize the GitHub Actions to actually build the environment and then run those tests there to see not necessarily the result, but rather the change depending on the commit. So for every pull request, we can actually verify if it made things better, if it made things worse, so we will have an overview. In addition to that, we're looking into ways of automatically doing linting for documentation, for our Markdown documentation in GitHub. And currently, unfortunately, we have not used the linter, so that means that once I tried to apply it, there were actually quite a lot of linting issues there. So it's something that we will try to figure out how we're going to introduce it. Luckily, there's a way to disable rules, so it will probably be an incremental process of introducing the documentation to the public workflows as well. And one more example here is also for supported version check. So NIS supports the free last versions of X-Road. And for those, it would actually be nice to build them every week or a certain interval, which we already do internally, but it will also be valuable information for any community users that want to verify that older versions are still checked and still actually work. Of course, refining our current workflow. So you saw that altogether, the current X-Road test action actually takes around an hour to run, which is quite a long time, and it's something that we want to improve. We've already introduced caching, but we want to look at parallelizing the build, maybe making it faster by that, and looking at other opportunities for doing that. And also improving the output. So I mentioned that the results file is currently not available for the core unit test if the entire test suite succeeds. So that's one thing that we want to improve, that you can see all of the succeeding tests as well. And then also recently we discovered that it's not quite simple to determine what went wrong in system tests, since those are run inside the action, inside a Docker container, and we don't actually provide access to those logs yet. So that's something that we want to improve, and in general, it's something that we are looking at improving over time. Then thirdly, an easier CLA process. This has been a big hindrance for past contributors. So we have had this digital signature requirement that's not easy to do if you are living outside of Europe, for instance, and it has in practice become a blocker for quite a few of our contributions. So we are looking at ways of making it easier. For certain contributions that are under a sort of change threshold, we might be able to remove the CLA requirement altogether. We're still looking at options there. For simpler signing, we're looking at DocuBit, for instance, to actually make the signing process a lot easier. And we're also still looking at options on when we can just forego the CLA requirement. But that's something that will be in the future. It's something that we will keep looking at, and it's definitely something that you will get more information regarding after we have implemented changes and discovered what opportunities we have there. And then lastly, on the looking towards the future slide here, we have, of course, continuing to find ways of including you, our community, into the dealings of X-Road, into the development process and into the discussions. And one of those things, as last year was Hacktober, we still want to take part in that. But in addition to that, we are looking at new venues and new opportunities to include the community in events, and also promote better discussion in GitHub via the changes to our service desk requirements. Of course, we're looking forward to seeing all of you on Slack, hearing your opinions, hearing your thoughts, and how you have found using X-Road, if there's any questions regarding it, if there's any interesting things you've done, and of course, suggestions on how we could better include you And with that, I would like to thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and hope you continue to have a great rest of the event.
All right, thank you very much, Raido. And actually, our audience really listened to me and accepted the challenge, because right now we already have received even more questions than the previous one.
Okay.
So very happy. So you have to answer, let's say, almost all of them, hopefully, if I will ask very fast and if you also answer very fast.
All right,
let's
try.
Jump to the, and there is even one, I would say, like a job application here. But anyway, so I will start with the first one. What are the most common reasons for joining Extrode community and its Slack channels? And do you find it provides peer-to-peer support as well?
I think that one of the main reasons might be that peer-to-peer support factor. So we also have Extrode operators from Estonia there, for instance, and Finland, and members from Iceland, and also other community members. And I think that in quite a lot of cases, it is the value of having actual experienced users there, and also, of course, having NIS members there that are answering questions, and they feel that they can sort of interact with us as well. I hope that's also one of the reasons.
I hope so as well. If I need help in getting started with Extrode, can I ask for support in the community Slack or some other forums?
The community Slack is one excellent way. Of course, depending on the contact with Extrode prior, then a good place to start would actually be the Extrode Academy courses that are free to use. And most likely you get a lot of information there. And then, of course, it's good to also ask us in the community Slack and ask other members. And maybe one thing that I would suggest is even not contacting us at NIS privately, but rather asking in a public channel so that we can share the knowledge that is gathered there.
Mm-hmm. There's one question, I always love these questions when something is more like a personal experience or just kind of personal memories, if I may say so. So there is one very good question. Turning your work with the Extrode at NIS, what has been the most fascinating part of it, and what has the work with the community actually meant for you personally?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think that one of the more interesting things working at NIS and on Extrode for me is sort of interacting with the community, because prior to NIS, my work was usually, or well, I guess always not open source, so there was no interaction with the community, and there was usually not that much interaction with the end user, rather with some customer. And I think that's been one very interesting thing for me personally. It's interacting with the community.
Great. And what are the biggest challenges in getting more contributors to Extrode?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I mentioned, the CLA portion there, so just the fact that we need to get the signed CLA, whether it be a digital CLA signature, or in some cases we have also had people post the CLA to us, but of course it's a process, and I think it can be kind of intimidating, especially if you have a small change in the documentation, for instance, just changing the wording a bit. And I think that's one of the large things. And then, of course, the general complexity of Extrode itself. So that, I think, is also a bit of a hindrance to a lot of people. You need to invest quite a bit of time to probably contribute larger things there.
Of course. Like I said, it's pretty much like a job application here, but yeah. So there's a question. I'm a developer and I would like to contribute to Extrode development. What do I need to do if I want to implement an existing backlog item?
So for that, I would suggest first getting pretty familiar with Extrode. We also have a specific academy course for actually that's directed at people that want to develop Extrode itself. And then after that, the first place I would look is actually the public GitHub project, where we have tried to have sort of a curated list of backlog items that we feel are simpler to get started with, and they require less broad knowledge. But of course, they're also free to have a look at the Jira backlog, have a look at the either the current backlog or even non-prioritized items that they feel they could assist us with, and we'd be very happy with getting any contribution.
And even the other person has also said the same, that he wants to contribute to X-Road, and asked the same, like, what is the first place that he should start with, and if there is wage, but he already answered that. Okay, let's take one more here. What were the biggest challenges you faced when moving the testing pipeline to GitHub Actions?
So I think one of the biggest challenges was just the way that the pipeline itself was built. So we had Docker containers already, but the way that we had previously built it was so that we actually tested only the develop branch. So the pull requests were tested once they were merged to develop. And now with the GitHub Actions, we also wanted to test every pull request, and that means that we had to change the way that that they work. So essentially, we needed to start building the packages so that we can locally install them and then run the actual pipelines inside that one container rather than relying on some pre-built packages from Jenkins, for instance.
It reached record level now, record amount of questions, and I'm going to take the very last one now. So what are some of the more common types of questions you have received from your community? Some of the very, very great concrete examples that you remember that you have received from the community?
I think one of the some of the interesting ones were related to X-Road metrics. So where they have either wanted to do some data analysis on an X-Road system itself, in which case we have directed them to member systems, because of course NIS itself does not run an instance of X-Road, so we don't have any good data to share, but luckily some of our members have X-Road metrics running, and it is a good source of information for doing this type of analysis. And then other ones are sort of related to where people want to try X-Road for custom implementations, such as we had a community member that wanted to use X-Road to put files on an S3 bucket. And that's something that we hadn't considered before, and it was something that actually needed a small change in how the X-Road core works, and we were happily able to do that for the next version, and it's actually an interesting thing to implement. So these types of customization questions are quite interesting for me.
All right, I'm not going to annoy you anymore. It was a very great chat that we had, and of course also your own presentation.